Hello, and welcome to How to Ruin Your Own Reputation. I'm your host, Marcy Warhaft, the resiliency rebel and author of The Good Stripper, a soccer mom's memoir of lies, loss, and lap dances. What do you do when you're a devoted wife and mom until a series of traumatic events, including death, crime, and betrayal, lead you into a secret double life filled with sex and secrets, forcing you to fight your way back before it's too late? Well, if you're me, you write a book and start a podcast. My guests have either found themselves living lives they've never expected or have chosen to reject society's expectations and shake up the status quo so they could feel free to be whoever they damn well want to be. Buckle up. It's going to be a hell of a ride. Hi, and welcome to How to Ruin Your Own Reputation. On this podcast, I talk to people who have either lived through unique experiences or are living lives that some people just don't quite understand. I'm all about telling the true story behind the story that we're told, which is why today is so exciting for me. So, what does truth and reality have to do with TV? Not very much. And today's guest knows all about that. So before I introduce her, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Kai Hibbert. So first, Kai is the author of Losing It, a fictional reimagining of my time on weight loss reality TV, which I am holding up. You can find it on Amazon, and I promise you, after you hear her story, you are going to want to buy it immediately. Now, the thing about Kai is I met Kai about 8 years ago when I interviewed her for an article I was writing for the Huffington Post about her experience being runner-up on season 3 of the reality, I say in quotations, game show, The Biggest Loser. But being on the show and finishing in second place isn't the compelling part of Kai's story. The compelling part is that while she was on the show, what she saw, what she experienced, the abuse and the lies that went on, she realized that she didn't want to be part of the problem. She wanted to be part of the solution. So when she left, she started speaking out about what was really going on. Now, when I say speaking out, I mean Time Magazine, Good Morning America, ABC News, CBS News, Inside Edition, Access Hollywood, People Magazine, Us Weekly, like you name it, she's been on it or in it. Now, you'd think that people would admire her honesty and be grateful. But that wasn't the case. She drew such anger that she even got threats, and that's something that I want her to discuss. The other thing is, since her experience, she's used her education in psychology and social work to become a licensed social worker who's helping people refute the negative messages we get about diet culture and fat phobia. And she's helping people live comfortably in their own skin, which is something that our society does anything but encourage. So without further ado, hi, Kai.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I am so excited because we've never really spoken, although we've been in each other's world for, almost 10 years now.
Yeah, almost a decade. Yeah.
So my first question is actually, before we even talk about your experience on the show, what blows my mind is when I did look back to see when we spoke years ago. And I think, okay, it's been about 8 years. And I think, okay, so we were and still are very passionate about debunking the myths around weight loss and fat phobia. And almost a decade later, we're still doing the same thing. And right. I find it at times very frustrating, especially when I'll have somebody who'll send me a video that someone made about body image or an article. And I'm like, yeah, I did this. I was saying that like 15 years ago, So my question is, A, how do you feel about that? And then do you feel like things have gotten better, that they've gotten worse, or that they're pretty much the same?
So I'm lucky that I've finally reached a point, because it's been 16 years since my season of the show. So I have finally reached a point where I don't get at least daily inundated with people sending me stuff to refute all the time online. Once I put the book out there, a lot of what I was able to do in order to conserve and save my space and my energy was to go just read my book. The answers to it are right there in the book. Just read the book with the questions that I get. I am really happy that since the beginning, when you and I were, down there in the trenches, basically, the show has been canceled. So once the show got canceled, it felt like a huge victory for all the hits I took for everything about speaking out against it. It
Mhm.
was renewed briefly. It didn't do well. So that to me says that yes, things have changed. I like, when you want to make change, you want to go from here to like here, but it ends up being like here to here, but it's still change. So more and more I'm trying to accept that like, hey, just moving the mark here is good enough. I don't have to burn myself out trying to force it here. I mean, that's ego speaking. There's so many other people out there doing the work and will continue to do the work. And what I started to do near the very end, where I stopped mostly giving like public speaking presentations and stuff like that, because I needed to take more time for my family, is making sure that I defer to people who have been doing the work for a very long time, such as yourself, and also making sure that I defer to voices that are not normally heard. Like I'm mixed, I'm Chamorro and I'm white. And to most people, I look like a white girl. And so it's very important for me to use what platform I have been given and the space I've been given to defer to these other people who are not listened to. So I like to recommend speakers in that way and use my voice to do that. So yes, I do think we moved that needle a little. I think that all of that work that you and I put in and others like us put in has changed things. And it gives me hope for kiddos like mine and everybody else's kiddos to see people, basically telling a capitalistic society that no, I'm not going to let you shame me for how I look and how my body is because you want to profit off of that shame. You want to profit off of continuing to make me feel bad about myself. If I don't feel bad about myself, I'm not going to buy your self-improvement product. I'm not
Right.
going to buy into diet culture. And I think that's changing. Unfortunately, I mean, capitalism is capitalism. So you
Mhm.
see the appropriation of this hard work and the strides that people have made and then it morphs into diet culture disguising itself as
Yes.
body positivity. And so that's just another way, capitalism is going to keep morphing to make money and we just have to keep morphing to combat it.
Now, when you did go to the show, you didn't join it because you were feeling this pressure to lose weight. That wasn't your entry into the show, right? So explain that because I find that really interesting.
People are always like, one of the big like, gotcha things that they think they can get me with is like, well, you went on the show, to go lose weight and it did it for you and like completely disregarding like how it damaged my health. When in actuality, so the weight loss was, I mean, I was already inculcated, excuse me, into diet culture because I grew up with a mother who was just inundated with it. And my mom had very serious eating issues. And, I was put into Weight Watchers in the fourth grade because she thought she was doing me a service instead of harming me. I can remember like the frozen Weight Watchers desserts and just like, thinking it was a treat. And so I already had that mindset. And it's not that I disliked my body, whatever size that I was. When I went to do the show, I wasn't unhappy with my body. As a matter of fact, and a lot of people don't know this, that like I was teaching aerobics at my size. Like I was a certified aerobics instructor, and my health metrics, however you want to accept them, because clearly the BMI is not one that I accept. But like my blood pressure and stuff like that were really good actually when I started the show. It actually did more damage to my health metrics by the time I was done if you compare my labs. But I really did it because I was in my 20s and I had just finished college. I worked 3 jobs through college. I had been accepted to law school. I had a full scholarship, but I was like, I still had student loans. And I was like, this sounds like a great story to tell my kid one day. Reality TV, it'll be a fun adventure and I can pay my student loans. Little did I know. Little did I know. Yeah.
Well, here's another question. Can you remember the moment, whether it was something you heard or something you saw, when you realized, uh-oh, this is not what I signed up for? Was there something that you went, oh, something in your gut that said, this doesn't feel right?
So through lots of therapy, by the way, I recommend therapy for everybody. It doesn't matter if you think you've got something to talk about or not. It's a good, healthy tool for everyone. Through therapy, I have realized that it wasn't until I was much older that I learned to trust my own intuition. I've been gaslit a lot as a child, as we all have, even with diet culture and in society. And so some of those warning bells literally came the first day, but I disregarded them. Like for instance, they confiscated our ability, like our phones and our computers and any ability to contact people that like genuinely loved us and cared about us, to be able to check in, to be like, does this sound okay to you? So the only people we could check in with were involved in production. So of course they're going to tell you that like having coffee as a meal and then exercising for 8 hours a day was okay because that's what production wants from you. So I had those little alarm bells right from the jump. But I didn't start to really pay attention to the fact that things were sketch until the trainer that was on my season, not my assigned TV trainer, but there was a behind the scenes sports trainer that was there, and he was out in the pool house of the ranch that we were on. And so the cameras wouldn't follow us there because they didn't want to document all of our injuries and how badly injured we were, because that's why we would go there. So there was
Cool.
no cameras out there. And when you would go to get like patched up for an injury or what was going on, he would be like, you know, this isn't okay, right? Like just like quietly trying to let us know. And like at one point production had told him to like stop, like letting us know that it wasn't okay. And you know, looking around at the people around me, my fellow contestants, and seeing that we really were like considering black coffee a meal, or dehydrating for a day or a day and a half before weigh-ins, I was like, this does not seem okay. But the biggest moment where I was like, uh-oh, is we had been, you know, just berated with these messages that like, you listen to your trainer. And that would have been in my season, Kim Lyons. She was my trainer. Jillian Michaels wasn't on the show that year. And so anytime we asked somebody else for advice or information, for instance, they brought in a registered dietitian to talk about how we should eat. And immediately after that woman left, Kim Lyons came to us and was like, do not listen to anything that she said. Do not eat anything that she said. Do not touch that. And so we were told that like our TV trainer, who was, you know, shown to the world as this bastion of knowledge and experience and who we should be listening to 24/7, you start to believe that, like, oh, my trainer's only got my best interest, when in actuality, you know, she's looking for credibility for one of her contestants to win. I mean, same thing with Bob. He was doing the exact same thing. And the real aha moment, like I told you, was when I witnessed both Bob and Kim being told by production that they had a photo shoot coming that afternoon for a magazine of some sort. And they both freaked out. I am talking tears and hysteria because they were not given prior notice so they could dehydrate so that they would look best when photographed. And I was like, wait a minute. No, these are the people I'm looking to get healthy. And I'm
Wow.
watching full on breakdowns and crying.
Wow.
Can't dehydrate. Yeah.
So again, that's the break when people say, "Oh, being overweight is unhealthy." What is that? Because that sounds incredibly unhealthy. Forget even the physical part of having to starve yourself in order to look good in pictures. The fact that the idea, and they were camera ready. These were TV
Oh
fitness
yeah.
people. The fact that they were brought to tears with that anxiety from not looking perfect. Maybe, each vein isn't going to pop out the right way,
That's
or you're not going to
exactly
see.
what it was.
The fact that that would cause them so much emotional stress is so unhealthy. I mean,
Exactly.
that is unbelievable to me. Now, while you're feeling this and seeing this, what was the feeling that you got that the other contestants were feeling? Were you able to kind of look at some and have that look of like, what the hell is that? Or do you think they were getting more indoctrinated into it? Do you think that they were kind of, I mean, you all were. I mean, you were
Oh,
in
yeah.
there too.
Clearly, like I would have told you before this whole experience that I was like the least likely person to join a cult. That is wrong. Anybody can be pulled into a cult. Absolutely anybody. And we should all be
Wow.
aware of that and not be so judgy. So the novelty of my season, and in full disclosure, I've never seen another season of that show. I've barely watched my own. So I don't know what it was like, but I do know that the contestants that were with me and that were cast from the very beginning, were fully indoctrinated. At that point when I saw the meltdowns, I felt like Alice through the looking glass. And I had asked, there was supposed to be a psychologist available anytime we needed it. That was completely untrue. Because I was like, I think I might need to talk to somebody because this feels not okay. Oh, somebody, we'll get somebody. I don't know where that person is. I'd love to find, maybe he'll come now, 17 years later, and talk to me about it. I have no idea. However, because my season had a component where there were people at home competing to be allowed to come
Remember
back.
that?
Yes, that we didn't know about. Those
Right.
of us that are in the show, we had no clue that this was going to happen.
Oh, you didn't?
No, we were told that
Oh.
all those people were going home. It was a separate thing. We'd never see
Oh, it was like
again.
you thought they were out of the competition, but wait. Okay.
Exactly. They never told us. And in fact, they blatantly lied to us. And so there was
Great.
like twofold of emotions when they showed up. I'm digressing a little, but I promise I'll get back to
No,
the
it's great. Go ahead.
Okay. So when they brought the people that were competing from home in and like weighed them and decided which male and which woman were going to stay, we stood there and we watched the weigh-in. First of all, they'd surprised us when they brought them in the room. And I know we were furious. A bunch of us were furious and tearful because you are counting down the weeks to be able to get out of there based on eliminations. So this meant it added more time to being there because people were there. I mean, it's portrayed on TV that we were bitter because we had more competition. This means we're stuck here even longer and there's more people to compete against. And what was even worse is when they proceeded to do their weigh-ins, every single contestant from home who is literally working out at least 6 hours less a day than us and eating more food had lost more weight than every single one of us.
Wow.
We are bruised. We are battered. We are lonely. Every single one of us is injured. We are hungry. And here are these people who have been surrounded by people who love them and family and haven't been, working out 6 to 8 hours a day or doing the ridiculous challenges that we had to do. And they're all in better health than we are. Not like discounting the lost weight. That's not where they're in better health. They're clearly mentally better off and physically they're not injured. They're coming in not injured at the end of the game to compete against us who are injured. So it was a very frustrating experience. However, I became pretty close at the time with the guy that was selected to stay. And what was really beneficial for me about that is, so he came in feeling better, mentally being more supported and looking around and he was like, no, absolutely not. Yeah. And so when they finally paired him up with a trainer, he felt empowered enough and powerful enough because of his results. And he could point to his results that like when they tried to starve him or when they tried to overexercise him, he went, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Wow.
Yeah. And so having that perspective there, and then he ended up winning a challenge at one point, and his wife also came because that was the reward. And she was an athlete. And she was amazing and supportive and just a wonderful human being. And at one point she pulled me aside and she was like, Kai, this is dangerous. This whole place is bad. It's bad for all of you. I wish that he would come home. This is not a good place for any of you. So because they hadn't been subjected to the weeks and weeks that we had before, we had that perspective come in. And I don't know if he talked with other contestants that were there. I know he and I took a walk every night. And it helped me to go, okay, I'm not crazy. This is bad.
Isn't it amazing? That's such a huge revelation that you just talked about. The fact that so much of the diet industry is really about extremes. People feel like they have to do something crazy because it's this desperation of doing it kind of slowly isn't enough. But then you just said, I mean, this was like this experiment that didn't even mean to be an experiment, where you had people who had the same goal, but did it in a way that was loving and more gentle and
Yes.
made more balanced, and they got better physical results without damaging. So I want to know, because I think this was surprised a lot of people. You talked about injuries. So you were in pretty good health before you went. So can you share some of the damage that was done to your body from being on the show, where you had experts and dietitians and nutritionists and professional trainers?
Sure. I could tell you in the first week I rolled my ankle. So I was on a rolled ankle that was taped like the whole time. I literally for probably the first 3 weeks bled through my shoes. Um,
Oh,
uh, I've never used so much moleskin in my life. Yeah, we were bleeding through our shoes. At one point, there was one challenge that involved like a spin bike. I literally, because of the chafing and not being prepared to, I mean, I came from Alaska and I was in California heat, and nobody thought about like, how do you accommodate bigger bodies that are moving now and what they might need. I rubbed a hole.
which is
So
what the whole show
literally,
is about. You think that they would do a little research.
right.
Okay.
I I had a literal hole in my thigh
Mm.
after that challenge because I couldn't stop, and it rubbed the skin away, and it turned into luckily it didn't become like an abscess and get infected because of the sports trainer, but nobody saw that. Nobody saw those pieces. As it progressed, it got even worse. My hair was falling out in clumps. I was constantly covered in bruises. I stopped menstruating, as did most of the women on the show. At one point during the at home portion of the show, I had been asleep in bed next to my boyfriend at the time, who is my husband now. And because I was so nutrient deficient and my electrolytes were so messed up, my leg muscles seized up so badly, it threw me out of bed. And the pain was so intense, I was vomiting. So, yeah, the extent was
and
pretty
and you
bad.
came in second, like
I did, right? I
like
won something for that.
that is the that's it's so disheartening, and it's so infuriating that, again, this was celebrated. So this wasn't you having to be wheeled out and sent home. This was somebody who, I mean, you won, you were top three, you were second. I mean, that's it's taking me it's taking me a second to wrap my head around that. This is, our society does that, though. We celebrate bodies that, uh, it's that whole thing where I say physical fitness versus physical appearance, right?
Yes.
As long as you look the way I think you should look, I don't care what it took to get you
Yeah.
there. And that's so unbelievably dangerous. And the fact that this was something that people were watching, the fact anyway that we were making weight loss entertainment, where
Yeah.
people were forming opinions and sitting down on their couch eating whatever they wanted, judging other people, is already a problem. So what do you think? Because I know you've shared before about, so there are a few things that stuck with me almost a decade later. One of the things was about how, they were concerned about you. And so the trainers would give out their numbers, their numbers, so that if you needed, because of course, there's going to be aftercare. I mean, they can't expect somebody to go through that experience and then just be like, see ya. So didn't they give you their numbers that you can call if you needed help?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. As a matter of fact, Bob would change his phone number after every season so that he couldn't be reached by anybody before. Yeah, no,
Okay,
they were
that's
done.
and he was the nice, like, I feel like I
He's
remember
the
it was like,
nice one.
oh,
Yeah.
he was the
Mhm.
nice Bob. He was the nice one. So here's my number, and then change it. Like, somebody you meet at a bar and you don't want to give them your real number. I also remember you sharing something about when they came in to do a commercial for milk.
Yes, we did multiple commercials. There are so many ad placements in that show if people are paying attention, but they're not. So there were a couple. There was one where we did the milk commercial. And so everybody had to stand around with our trainer, and we're in the kitchen and we have to drink a glass of milk because it's good for you, and do the milk mustache. And as soon as the cameras cut off, our trainer literally yelled at us to spit it out. Spit that out immediately. We drank no milk, not once in the entire time that I was there. Nobody drank any milk. That wasn't a thing. No.
So it's
Yeah.
amazing, again, that it was just blatantly lying. They're blatantly lying while they're saying this is the right way, this is healthy. And again, look, reality TV, there's no reality, but most of the time you're watching people in relationships, or you're watching cooking things that aren't going to have a serious negative impact on people and their well-being. So the fact that you're listening to everybody involved, because you had the trainers, you had the production staff, you had so many levels of people who were okay with this. That again, it's so infuriating. Now, do I remember you saying that you tried to leave at one point?
I didn't try to leave the show because at that point I was still way too brainwashed to think that I would be letting so many people down.
Mhm.
I was considered a second string contestant that got put into the show. I was literally in a different hotel than everybody else that was cast, and I still have no idea how I ended up in the cast. But I was reminded of it constantly by production about how like 200,000 other people wanted my
Mhm.
slot, and I better not let them down. So I didn't try to leave. There are contestants in further seasons that did, and they were absolutely vilified. Absolutely just vilified for leaving, even though it was about their health and their sanity. I like to say that everybody involved in the production was complicit, which is why I had such a difficult time once I was off the show and able to talk to people in person. Giving the speeches or public presentations people wanted. They would hire me
Ooh.
to come speak, or they would ask me and I would go for free. And then when I gave them my truth about the experience, I had so many people react as though I had killed Santa Claus. There was so much hostility. So many people were so angry, but I could not remain complicit in this as though everybody else had. And, I tried really hard. I don't know, maybe I'm less forgiving the older I get, but I tried very hard not to put that pressure on any of the other contestants. I would always say I didn't speak for their experiences, but there were a myriad of people that were reaching out to me behind the
Ah.
scenes
Mhm.
that were equally or more miserable or more sick than I had been, yet were presenting this public face so that they could continue to profit off their connection to the show. Now, don't get me wrong, there were other contestants that were contacting me behind the scenes that weren't profiting off it. They were just trying to work through the experience and how they felt, and they needed to talk to someone. But those that continued to profit off their connection, I had no problem exposing them. I've exposed a bunch of them on social media repeatedly. That hypocrisy doesn't stand with me. If you are
I've
part
seen
of
it.
Exactly. If you're part of the problem, you have a responsibility to be part of the solution, or at least just be
Mhm.
quiet while other people are trying to solve the problem.
So what was the flip that you said, okay, now I'm going to really, like, there was one thing where you'd be hired or you go in to speak and you weren't giving them what they wanted. But when you said, okay, you want me to talk? You don't want me to talk. Like, what was it that just fueled you to say, this is it? Like, I'm telling it all.
So my family staged an intervention. They actually staged an intervention before the finale. They sat me down and they were like, this is not okay. Maybe you'll win, but you're gonna die."
Mm.
And even with them staging that intervention and getting me to like a therapist and getting me to people who had like my physical health as their goal as opposed to all of this, I still engaged in really, really unhealthy behaviors because, my excuse was like, I'm almost there, it's almost done. But they helped, at least during that time period, whittle back my unhealthy behaviors. This is going to sound absurd when I say it, but they cut my workouts down from between 6 and 8 hours a day down to just 3 hours a day,
Right.
which is still ridiculous.
Mhm.
I was doing things like, and trigger warning, because I'm going to talk like calories and food stuff, but I was supposed to be keeping a food diary, and I would do things like count a cup of iceberg lettuce as 100 calories. Like
Oh, geez.
it's like chewable water. That's all it, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they would literally sit with me, my friends and my now husband, and make sure I ate every bite on my plate, whether it took 2 hours or not. And I cried through some of those meals.
I
And
hear you.
so once that intervention happened, even though I didn't change like overnight in my behaviors, literally at the finale, I had met a reporter previously. They did a spread on me, I think like in Us magazine, and he was an amazing individual. And he and I actually like had coffee and talked for an hour after the actual interview, and we hung out. And so I was so angry, I think, and out of my mind with hunger and
I
dehydration
was
at the
just going to say
finale.
I'm hungry.
I
Yeah.
was. I was so hungry and I was dehydrated and everything. And so at the finale, once they dropped the balloons and they celebrated the guy who won, the press comes up onto the stage, and I'm kind of like wandering around a little out of it, and this reporter hears me talking to another reporter who had like started asking me questions, and I was just angry and flippant, and I was like, I think they asked me what I was going to do next, and I was like, well, clearly Playboy, because I'm not disgusting to behold anymore, and now I can be a commodity and a product for them. And I was just going off, and this reporter came over and was like, she's kidding, and escorted me over to my husband and was like, don't let her talk to reporters right now. And so that's like really when I started, and I just like I didn't stop from that point on. I mean, I continued to get cease and desist letters from NBC, but I was like, what are you going to sue me for? First of all, I'm not lying. And second of all I have is student loan debt. Good luck. Yeah.
So what, and then the response, because I remember it was tough for you for a long time because people were invested. I mean,
Oh.
people who didn't know you, because that wasn't that the whole thing where they felt you should be grateful because again, you lost weight, so you should be happy.
Exactly, because the ends clearly justify the means. Doesn't matter that you're sick. I was so sick after the finale. I ended up in the hospital because I had a full body thrush infection. And when they went to talk to me, they were like, "Do you have HIV? Do you have something that's compromised your immune system?" And I said, "No, I had just damaged everything so badly, my body just shut down once it was over, and I was so sick." And people did feel entitled to tell me that I was ungrateful, that
These are
I,
strangers. Also,
oh,
we're talking.
complete
You would get
strangers.
mail from.
Yes, I would get messages on social media. I was very lucky that social media wasn't as prolific, during that time period. So it could have been much worse, but I got death threats. I got strangers who found my phone number and called my house because God told them to. I would be out to dinner with family, and strangers would come up to my table and ask me if I should be eating that. Um, I I had my son about a year after the finale, maybe a little more than that. And I remember he was only 3 weeks old. It was my first time out of the house, and I had to go get groceries. And I'm just like disheveled. And clearly, I just had a baby. I haven't been sleeping. And I've got my little basket of whatever at the grocery store. And some complete stranger came up to me and told me that basically I let myself go. And I was so ungrateful for letting myself go. And I'm literally like, I just had a baby. Like, what are you? What? Yeah.
You just created a person
Yeah.
in your
Right. I
body.
built a whole
Like you
human.
just
Like,
literally created a human being and
but I,
delivered it and are taking care of it. But you're a failure.
but I
I
was
mean,
a
that's
failure.
insanity. So how long do you think it took you to get your health back to a place? Has it gone back to a place where it's healed completely from the experience?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say for me, I know when other people in eating disorder or disordered eating recovery come to a place where they feel that they're recovered. I will never be recovered. I'm always in, danger, I guess, of like relapsing into behaviors if there are certain triggers. So I try to avoid them. I have to say, having a child has been really eye-opening in making sure that my eating habits are not something I wouldn't want him to emulate. So that's helpful. I'm like, I want to make sure that my kid has a very healthy relationship with food and with his body. And so I try to remember, like, remember who's watching. And that's helped me a
Yeah,
lot.
absolutely. Well, I can absolutely relate to that because as somebody who battled an eating disorder for a really long time, I say my impression of or definition of recovery is very different than I thought it was when I was struggling. So at first I thought it would be, oh, I'm going to wake up every day and just love my body, love how I look and eat what I want and not, and
No,
that's not what it is. I
no.
still hear the message. I still get them. There are times when I will still be a little hyper focused. The difference is I don't listen to it. The difference is I know to say, it's your disorder. Or if I tend to be really focusing on my body, I'll think, okay, what's going on in my life that's out of control? Because when my life feels out of control, I can't deal with that. Well, what can I fix? I can deal with my body. So I have those tools, but to say that it's not something that's ever in my life anymore, that I'm completely, it doesn't, but I'm so grateful that it doesn't, that it's not hurting me, that I
Yes.
still do the things that I want to do. It doesn't, it doesn't keep me isolated from the world the way that it used to. So I like that you said that, because I think that people feel like it's very black and white, and it's not. And it's the fact that we have any kind of healthy relationship with our bodies is amazing. I mean,
Right?
that's, the fact that I just shared something about that this morning, about the fact that I don't love how I look all the time, but I love my body, because my body fights so hard it works so hard every day to keep me alive. And I'm really, really grateful for that. So that's great. So now, now that you've been through all that, you're still, what you do in life is you help other people get to a point where they feel comfortable with themselves. So it's something you can't really get away from, right? You feel compelled to
I
keep spreading the
do.
messaging.
Yeah, so a lot of my work, so for a while there, it was focused on, helping disordered eating and recovery when I do clinical social work. But I found for a period of my recovery, it triggered me too much. And so I had to
Yes.
step away from that. And so I worked with the court system doing social work there instead, and moved away from it. But when I do like private clinical practice, I will still take on clients, and I make sure that it is an absolute body safe space, and that they know that they can come to me for that. I think that, I mean, it's not that I'm necessarily a pleaser anymore. I think that what kind of got me in the position where I was so easily brainwashed is I was very much a pleaser of a human being. I very much wanted to make the people around me very happy. And, I'd always thought that I would be an attorney. I had that full ride scholarship waiting for me to law school, and I just rejected it and decided to do social work, because I think, and I hope that I can do more positive, like I can make a more positive impact on the world around me in that role than I could as an attorney. And so that's why I made the choices that I did. I also I've really stepped back, especially on my social media and places like that, where I just won't discuss my body at all anymore. I just shut people down. The only time it really comes up is if, like, a fan has stumbled upon me or something like that, or a fan of the show, and they'll say something about how I look right now, and they don't understand that, for instance, when they're like, "Oh, you look amazing," and I'm like, "Well, I have no control over that, because what you're complimenting is my lupus. My weight fluctuates based on how bad my chronic illness is and what medications I'm on. And so you're complimenting my chronic illness. So let's not do that." And other than that, my body's not anybody else's business anymore at all.
Absolutely. So is there
Yeah.
something that you would, any kind of advice, just one bit of information that you would give to somebody who might be struggling? I know that social media is, it's huge. It's such a, oh, it's so, there's good and there's bad. There's a lot more body positivity. There wasn't any way back when, and there's that now, but
None.
there's still, we're so inundated. And like you said, a big frustration for me is that the fitness industry or the health industry has sort of taken over, and it's all about health. It's all about health. So it's still a big, it's still tough. So someone who's been so into it, is there something that you could, either a resource or just a bit of advice to give to somebody who might be kind of struggling?
Yeah. So there are two pieces of advice I would probably give. The first one would be, if there is a single social media account that you follow that makes you feel bad about yourself, unfollow that immediately. Get that out of
Yes.
your space. Get it gone. You don't need that. You don't need that. And then my second piece of advice, especially, like, I just think about kids right now, just everything is so public for them on social media. And there's so many, like, people who have opinions, and, you
Mhm.
know, feel free to give whatever opinion, whether it was asked for or not. And, you know, what I learned is that whether someone compliments my body or my appearance in a positive way or in a negative way, that means absolutely jack and shit about my body or my appearance. And it speaks everything about that person. So it's got nothing to do with you. Dismiss it and let it go on. And that's how I cope. That's their vision, that's their reality. It's got nothing to do with my actual reality and who I am.
It's amazing. I find that we're so, there's so many times where we can say, "Oh, I don't care what people think." Like I've said before, if somebody will insult our personality, like, "Oh, you're mean" or "You're stupid," we kind of go, "No, I'm not." But then the minute they get to our physical appearance, all of a sudden we think, "Oh, maybe they have, oh, do I look tired today? Do I look old today? Do I look heavy today?" All of a sudden we give them this expert position that before, we're so, no matter what's going on in the world, no matter how successful we might be, if we don't feel good in our bodies, it really holds us back, which is why it has always been, and I mean, I'm hoping it won't always be, but there will always be this element of this self-esteem attached to our body image. So when people say, and I'll still get people say to me, it's not a big deal. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. It's everything. It is everything. We don't feel good about ourselves. It keeps us back from relationships, from work stuff, from experiences, from everything. So I'm so grateful that you spoke with me today. I loved meeting you face to face like this. Has been exciting. So two things before we go. So one, I ask all my guests this fun question, because I get asked this all the time, is if there was going to be a movie made of your life, who would play Kai Hibbard?
So, like, the first thing I have to say is that it would be completely unethical to make a movie about my life, only because it would mean that an actress would have to either wear a fat suit, which is gross and fat phobic, and then remove it to show the transition, or it would force somebody to do horrible machinations to get their body size to change. So that would be no. I would be like, don't ever do it. My second response would be anybody but Rebel Wilson.
Wow.
Rebel Wilson really gets under my skin for a lot of reasons involved with fat phobia in the media and perpetuating it while pretending you're not. But I think that I would want like Melanie Linsky or Daniela Vega would be my two choices to be.
And she's posted about how she's gotten some fat phobic criticism.
Yes.
Right.
So yes, that's who I would be honored by either of those two women. So
all right, so we're putting it out. We're going to put it out in the universe, something like that. And then again, I want to mention your book again, Losing It by Kai Hibbert, a fictional reimagining of my time on weight loss reality TV on Amazon.
Yes.
Thank you again for chatting with me. I appreciate it so much, and I appreciate you, and good luck with everything that you're doing.
Thank you. And I appreciate you. And I especially appreciate that you keep on dancing. I love it. I love it.
Can't stop, won't stop.
Join in. I love it. Love it.
Thanks for the encouragement. Take care.
Don't forget to subscribe to How to Ruin Your Own Reputation. Available now everywhere you get your podcasts.